Good evening, everybody. GoldandBlack.com, Minister of Culture, Brian Neubert here, live in Mackey Arena, albeit on tape delay, following Purdue's 82-51 season opening win over the University of Evansville, the Purple Aces, as you might know them. This is your GoldandBlack.com rap video, brought to you by our friends at the Purdue Club Hotel. Thank you so much to them for your support, as always. We will dive right into it. So Purdue is opening the season with basically an extension of the exhibition season with 2 of its bye games. When I look at Purdue's schedule, I count 5 bye games in the non-conference season. By bye games, I mean games where you're going to roll over the opponent no matter what, 99 times out of 100, but you're buying the game because you need to fill out your schedule, you need to fill out your season ticket package, etc. And the schools who are coming to you to play badly need the money. The best part of this game, the best thing that came out of this game was the University of Evansville getting a check so it can functionally run an athletic department. That's the nature of the big ones versus the little ones in college basketball and college sports in general. Regarding the actual basketball game, continuing with the warped reality nature of what we've seen from this Purdue team so far. The light's bouncing off me really funny, isn't it? I'm just noticing this. Hopefully I'm not having some sort of episode here. This was warped reality again for Purdue, not because it wasn't prepared or it wasn't, doing whatever its MO with exhibition games was in terms of preparation, things like that, but because this wasn't the Purdue team you're going to see this season. These weren't the lineups you're going to see from Purdue all year long. Trey Kaufman-Renn being out for this game with what seems to be a minor hip issue that only surfaced really today during shoot-around. Obviously, that's a huge piece of this team. Something that is undoubtedly required some, assimilation to that reality when Purdue opened up. You've got this team, these 3 guys who've played so much basketball together that when you just introduce something new into that right off the bat to start a season, without really practicing this way, there's going to be some assimilation. I thought this was a clunky game for Purdue in a lot of ways, but in a clunky game that you win by 31 points, you'll take clunky all day long. Now, nobody's going to be beating their chest, nor should anyone be beating their chest about beating the University of Evansville 82-51. But whatever clunkiness you saw in this game from Purdue, maybe not looking like the well-oiled machine you would think the most known commodity in college basketball to be, that's a pretty good reason. Now, if you think I just overpronounced the word commodity, it's because when I use the term known commodity, I have to think about it for a second, because a lot of people say known quantity versus known commodity. And the funny thing about that is they're both correct, because if you're a known commodity, you know what you have. If you're a known quantity, you know how many you have. And they both speak to the same general point of certainty. So anyway, so this was not really the Purdue team you're going to see all year long. And I think when Purdue's front line is whole, when Trey Kaufman-Renn is playing next to Oscar Clough or Daniel Jacobson, I think that's when you start really assessing the rebounding part of this. I think Purdue at the rim is a much better rebounding team, is going to be a much better rebounding team than it was last year. That doesn't say a whole lot, but that was the biggest problem Purdue had to fix. Nevertheless, you're looking at these stats. University of Evansville gets, I can just call them Evansville at this point. First reference is behind us. 20 offensive rebounds for Evansville. That is, obviously an eyesore on a box score. Not really something Purdue can get away with when the opponents are, better, when winning is a possibility for them. I think it's kind of funny because I think Purdue would prefer, in a lot of ways, opponents to have to jack a lot of threes than be getting in the lane and things like that. Kentucky shot a ton of threes. The rebounding part of it was tied to that in large part. But if you're going to make people shoot a lot of threes, you got to rebound those misses. And that's not on as much on centers and size at the rim. I'm sure there were instances where Oscar Clough and or Daniel Jacobson could have blocked people out better, things like that. But at the end of the day, you got to get the long rebounds. You got to corral them when you can get your hands on them, things like that. You got to direct them to teammates, whatever it might be. That's what's kind of catching up with Purdue here, or caught up with Purdue a little bit here in this Evansville game. But that's the one thing that jumps off the page is Purdue should be a much better rebounding team than it was a year ago, but it has to do it, and it has to do it all over the floor, not just at the rim, not just right under the basket, things like that. The places where Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson should make much more of a difference in Purdue's outlook as a rebounding team than anything you saw last season. That said, when you look at Clough and Jacobson, I've always, and I know Matt Painter does it this way too. That's not why I do it. I just think it makes sense. When you've got two players who are good at the same position, looking at their combined productivity is the better way to do it than say, okay, this player got this. That's not enough. So this year with C.J. Cox and Jakari Harris, I think it's very appropriate to look at their combined productivity versus their individual productivity. And certainly with Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson, it is more appropriate, I think, to look at their combined productivity versus their individual productivity. And when you look at that part of it with the center position, Purdue gets 20 points, 18 rebounds, 7 fouls drawn, 7 of 15 shooting. That very easily could have been 9 of 15. Purdue's blocking shots again every now and then. That's, I'm sure, a welcome sight. Jacobson gets 1, Clough gets 1. So 2 blocked shots, which is what Purdue got last season in like a month worth of games. So the combined productivity between Clough and Jacobson, I think, is a really big deal and represents a huge difference in this Purdue team versus last year's Purdue team, from which there are very little comparison points to be made at this point, because enough is new in addition to all that's old that it's clearly not the same team. And when you look at the rebounding part of it, the centers, the rebounding capability, the shot blocking capability, combined with Purdue's urgency to run, to get out in transition, and to really, really put pressure on defenses, get easy baskets, get open threes that Fletcher Lawyer and Jack Benner had a great deal of success with today. Got Braden Smith a few of his 11 assists, and we are paying attention to that number here among us observers because it's a very important number, especially this time of year when stat padding might be a little bit more acceptable than under normal circumstances. But those transition threes are Purdue's sweet spot. Those layups and dunks in transition are going to be Purdue's sweet spot. And when you look at how Purdue might be able to rebound this year, when you have a 6'9" physical power forward playing next to either a 260-pound hungry hippo of a rebounder in Oscar Clough, I mean that respectfully. I just think the comparison of toy hippos consuming marbles is a great analogy for rebounding. So don't think I'm calling Oscar Clough a hippo. I obviously would never do that. Daniel Jacobson, 7'4" at the rim, 2 for rebounding. You get that rebound. One of those 3 guys, all of whom should be plus rebounders at their positions, you get that rebound, you get it to Braden Smith, and you go. And that's going to really make Purdue's offense even better. And they're going to be hard enough to stop in the half court. If they can, steal a bunch of points in transition every game, they're going to be really, really hard to beat, because there's going to be that productivity every game. As I talk about all the time, this wall of productivity, it's the wall of efficiency and the baseline of productivity. I make up these terms, and I got to go down with the ship on them all year long. So the baseline of productivity comes from the transition points you might get, the putbacks you might get from size and rebounding, and the wall of efficiency comes with actually making your shots around the rim now versus what they did last year, not turning the ball over with your low usage players, and your lower usage players shooting a pretty efficient number from 3, which I think all of those things are safe bets this year. And that's going to give you a cushion when you might have a bad three-point shooting night or something like that, provided they hold up. It's not as much about the stars doing their job. It's about everybody else around them propping the stars up and allowing them to do their thing, if that makes any sense. I don't know if it makes sense. I don't listen to myself until afterwards, so hopefully it makes sense. Jack Benner obviously was the revelation in this game, getting pressed into a starter role by Trey Kaufman-Rand's absence. I've said, for quite a while here that the skill level Jack Benner will bring to the fore in however many minutes a game that is when Trey Kaufman-Rand is back is going to be a really useful element, because you have a guy who can dribble and pass in addition to shoot, and he can really shoot. And, he didn't shoot great in the exhibitions, but this was what was coming at some point. I didn't know if it would come this year, because typically first-year guys don't shoot great, but him, shooting really well in his first real game, making 3 of 6 threes and being ready to shoot. And that's really one of the big issues for freshmen sometimes, is not being willing to shoot, but being ready to shoot, knowing where your feet are, knowing where your hands are, knowing where the pass is coming from, knowing where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there, knowing that there's a good chance that Braden Smith is throwing that cross-court pass with his left hand or through his legs or over his head or whatever it might be. Being ready to shoot, being in the right spot to shoot, and being willing to shoot. Those things don't all come right away typically for freshmen. You can look at the percentages. First-year guys very rarely shoot well. Benner came in. He's been letting it fly. He's playing with confidence. He's going to be a really good three-point shooter for Purdue, but he's going to be that guy that Purdue has won a lot of games with in his career, that really smart, high IQ, intelligent sort of guy. And I'm trying to avoid the term scrappy gym rat, because you know what I'm kind of getting at here. But he can dribble and pass too, and those are a couple of things. Again, I'm not bringing this back every game to what Purdue had last year at the 4, but none of those guys were ball handlers. None of them were decision makers. And as Purdue has gotten big at the 4, they have never stopped coveting guys who can dribble, pass, and shoot at that position. You look at what they did with Robbie Hummel, Vince Edwards, guys like that. That is their ideal dynamic offense sort of fit at that position. But when Caleb Swanigan wants to come on your team, you take him. When Mason Gillis gives you something that is really valuable to your team, you play him. When Trey Kaufman-Rand is best suited to play the 4 as an All-American senior, you put him there. And that's just pragmatism. That's just intelligence. That's just common sense. But I think in a perfect world, if you had to ask Matt Painter and P.J. Thompson and all the rest to ideally construct a lineup, I think that 4 position would be more of a perimeter dribble, pass, and shoot, switchable defender than it would be a 6'10", physical sort of traditional 1980s NBA power forward. Now, if it's Karl Malone, you take Karl Malone. If it's Charles Barkley, you take Charles Barkley. If it's Xavier McDaniel, well, I don't know. We'll see. But for the modern college basketball game, I think Purdue would really like a guy who can dribble, pass, and shoot at that position. And Jack Benner is that guy. And that's why I'm thinking they can really do some fun things. Fun for them, I should say. I don't play. But they can really do some fun things offensively with that second unit when Benner's in the game. Depending on who he's playing with, that could go a couple of different ways. And then I think there's nothing that says after this season that Jack Benner can't be your 4-man for the 3 years after this. You might have to play a little bit differently, but different's not always the worst thing in the world. And the one thing Purdue has been, the one thing Matt Painter's always been, is adaptable. Adaptable to his personnel, adaptable to the climate of college basketball, adaptable to basketball trending at all levels. And I think Jack Benner, this might have been the start of a really, really good Purdue career for him. So that's something to watch here as he sort of grows as a player through the course of this season. That's what I got. I think that pretty much covers everything. except for that weird glow coming off my hat. That's a little unsettling. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And once again, this is GoldandBlack.com, Minister of Culture, Brian Neubert, with your GoldandBlack.com rap video. Thank you so much to the Premium Club Hotel for your support. As always, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Help us juice that algorithm. So we'd appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.